Welcome everyone to our panel discussion on clearly communicating with employees with the Jolt Communication Manager. My name is Christopher, and I'll be moderating our discussion today. In a moment, we'll meet our panelists, but first, I'd like to share an alarming scenario described by one of Jolt's customers, a food service operator that we're going to call George. Now, according to George, when it comes to food safety, every second counts. George spends a lot of time thinking about how frequently he serves food. How many customers are being served every minute across his business? What happens when a supplier announces a food safety recall? How quickly can he get the word out to all his stores to stop serving that specific item? This communication might need to be passed down from the corporate office to district managers and then to store managers. And what if a store manager is off that day? How many unsafe items might be served before everyone finally hears about the recall? In this scenario, George doesn't count time in minutes or seconds, but in the number of potentially hazardous food items served to his valued customers. Now, whether you're in food service, retail, or just about any business with employees who are on their feet, challenges around communication are all too common. Today, I'll speak with a panel from Jolt that will share a solution to these problems. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Christopher, and I've been in training and management for about the last 18 years. During that time, I've been involved in sales from everything to software to hardware, but I actually got my start in the food service world. I waited tables to support myself in both high school and in college. With me today is CJ Lewis. He's the co-founder and chief operations officer of Jolt. CJ, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience?
Hey, how's it going, everyone? First and foremost, so thankful to have everyone on. I know we have a mix of people who are familiar with Jolt and have been customers for a long time, and we wouldn't be a company without your support, so thank you so much. And I know we have some who have either never heard of us or using your solutions, so we're excited to present to you what we have today and really what Jolt is all about. What a fun week it is. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. Safe travels to those who are looking to travel. And it's a busy week with holidays. And so we thank you for spending some time with us. As Christopher mentioned, I am one of the co-founders and COO of Jolt, and been doing this close to a decade now. So it's been a fun ride, and just absolutely love the restaurant industry, and also retail and deskless as I've been in it for years. First job back in high school was in Payway, and was a server at Brick Oven. That got me through college. And so I just really love the customers that we serve. I was telling Josh, who's with us, I have to thank him as well for being our panelist before I turn over to him. In the spirit of thanking him and being part of McDonald's, I do love the sausage egg McMuffin. It's one of my favorite fast food menu items. So Josh, thank you for being part of that organization. And he will and might share with you a sneak behind the scenes tip on how to make that even better. So Josh, I'll let you take it away, but so good to have everyone with us.
Thanks, CJ. That sausage egg McMuffin, that's one of my favorite go-tos, especially on busy mornings when I'm in a rush and I don't have time to make myself breakfast at home. With us also, as CJ introduced, Josh Riedel. He's an operations supervisor with McDonald's. Josh, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience?
Hi guys, I'm Josh. I've been with McDonald's for 23 years now. I started as a crew person. This has been my only job that I've had since high school. We operate 4 restaurants in the York, Pennsylvania area. And I've held every position from crew person to general manager to supervisor. We've been using Jolt for probably 5 or 6 years now, and are really happy with the product. If you don't have it, definitely something that, will help your business. And I shared with the other panelists on the chat the other day, if you want to make your sausage egg McMuffin taste better, add hot mustard sauce to it. Now, that may not be an option in your area. I know that's kind of regional, whether you have hot mustard or not, but definitely takes it up a notch.
Excellent. Thank you for the pro tip. And thank you, CJ, for taking a few moments to introduce yourself as well. Josh, just one comment I'll make. I've spoken with a lot of McDonald's operators, and something that always strikes me whenever I talk to folks with McDonald's is how often those folks started their careers at McDonald's, often working there in the store serving customers, and it turns into a lifetime career. So often the folks that you speak to at a franchise office, they have their roots in the business. And I think that says a lot about the culture of your company.
Yeah, thanks. It's definitely, one of those things where, coming up, many of the people that started when I was a crew person are now general managers for me and assistant managers and even other supervisors. So it's nice to see everyone grow in the business.
And a big thank you to our audience who's joining us today. A quick note, please post any questions that you have during our discussion using the Q&A button in Zoom. We'll save all of those, and at the very end, we're going to have a Q&A session where we'll address all of your questions. Also, if you need to drop off early during the presentation and you want to reach out to Jolt for more information, look at that number on the screen, 877-396-4112, extension 2. Or you can send us an email at sales@jolt.com. So CJ, I'm going to turn to you to start us off. Today, you're going to share a solution that can help business owners and operators improve communication with employees and move beyond solutions like Post-it notes or message boards. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, certainly. And as a little bit of context before we jump right in, as you see, Communication Manager is the newest product solution that we are offering as part of the Jolt platform. But what you see here on the screen are all the solutions that Jolt has to offer. Again, been doing this close to a decade now, and our roots and background come from Baskin-Robbins. My business partner and founder, CEO Josh, was a Baskin-Robbins franchisee for close to 10 years as well. And through that experience, that's where Jolt came up with these different solutions. So we're excited to provide them for you and for these various industries. But just so you're aware of what we're all about is this is Jolt, right? This is what we have to offer. We have solutions, and what we're really kind of at our core and what we consider best in class in is our digital list product. And you see that there at the top. And really what you get with that, as a customer said once that I love, is you're only limited by your imagination. You really can do any sort of process, whether it's a frequency on a multiple times a day, a daily, weekly, monthly. Really, Jolt can handle that type of process. So examples could be anything from your opening, midday, closing. You've got pre-shift travel pass. You've got monthly cleaning reminders, HACCP logs, all your temperature taking. There's a lot you can do with that. We also offer solutions like labeling for all of your food expiration labels, an info library. We have time clock, sensors, scheduling. And again, those 6 solutions have been with us for years. And today we're very excited to now add to that and launch what we're calling our Communication Manager. And so what this is, we're going to dive into it more here, but it's all about, when you think of communication, like really it is at how critical is communication, right? It's what helps us move throughout the day, relationships, whether inside, outside of work. It always kind of boils back to how we're communicating with each other. And we know that communication, although presents itself in fabulous ways, it also can be a challenge. And today we're going to talk about why and how communication can be a challenge and how we address that. But it's all about how we can communicate directly with our team members. And that is when team members are actually on the front lines, right? They're not sitting at a desk. Depending on the situation, they shouldn't be on their phones, right? And so how do you communicate with employees on the front lines? That's what we're going to be hitting today.
Thanks, CJ. Josh, why don't you chime in here? What needs have you experienced? What challenges have you found just in your day-to-day operations running a business?
I think our biggest opportunity is definitely communicating the same message to multiple people at once. So, it's great that you can go talk to somebody and you tell, it's like that game of telephone when you're a kid. You tell one person, they tell somebody else, they tell somebody else. By the time you get to the 18th person, the story's changed 100 times. So, definitely being able to communicate, exactly what you want directly to the people that make a difference on the front lines.
And Josh, I'll add to that. And Christopher, I apologize. I missed a piece here that I wanted to add. And one of the biggest foundations of me personally as a co-founder of Jolt, so excited today to launch Communication Manager, because in a lot of ways, this was the genesis of Jolt, right? We kind of just showed you all the different solutions we offer, but really it's this concept, some of the problems we struggle with that really became why we created Jolt in the first place. And I'll tell you the story behind it. So, as I mentioned, Josh, being a Baskin-Robbins franchisee, you have to ask yourself, well, prior to these solutions, what is it that we did to communicate with our employees? And it was the classic, try and communicate around the time clock, because that when employees come to work every day, maybe it's selfish of them to want a paycheck, maybe not, right? But they're going to make sure that they clock in every day and clock out. And so what better way to communicate with them than having the time clock and then putting Post-it notes or just different forms of communication around that tool. The challenge is that over time, and not even just over time, but very quickly, it became what we call a crying wolf scenario, right? So if I'm an employee coming in to clock in and I see these Post-it notes, if that Post-it note or that document, that page, that laminated piece of paper, whatever it is, if that's new, I don't necessarily know that because I'm used to seeing it, right? And so you start to ignore it after a while. So we recognized that, Josh did, and we thought we'd get smart and outsmart the employees a little bit. And instead of posting things around the time clock, it was, let's take a big piece of red paper, right? Grab their attention and put it over the time clock, right? So now, in order to see this information, it was just right there in their face that said, "Stop, read this." And the hope was that before they clock in, that they would actually see that. But then you come back that afternoon or the next day and ask, "Hey, employee such and such, what did you think of that announcement or that new message or that new policy?" And they'd be like, "What are you talking about?" Right? And so that was those were some of the frustrations that we dealt with. Right? We thought we had figured out a solution to some of the communication gaps we had, but really it wasn't until Jolt and what we're announcing today that we feel like we've really nailed a solution to this problem of communicating not just clearly, but also effectively, making sure people understood the communication. So that really is what sparked the genesis of Jolt, and so why we're excited.
So what I'm hearing for this is that the two big needs really are, number one, making sure that there's clarity of the message, making sure that it's not a game of telephone, that people aren't interpreting it or misinterpreting the message. And to your point, CJ, making sure they actually read the message. Post-it notes, even sticking a red sign on the time clock wasn't enough to ensure that people actually read or understood what it was that you needed them to see. And that was really the genesis, not just for this product, but even for Jolt as a company. Now, let's dive into the Communication Manager and learn a little bit more about this, because as I understand it, it actually has two separate parts. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So for those viewing, you can see here on the screen that's it's broken down into two feature sets. One is what we call announcements, and the other one message blast. And we'll first dive in here to announcements. Conceptually, it's pretty simple how it works, and we'll dive into the logistics here. But at a high level, it's all about, as I mentioned, communicating with employees on the front lines. And so, and the beauty is it's extremely flexible. So whether it's you want to communicate with everyone across multiple stores, or just a subset of stores, or just role specific, you can send down communication while employees are, again, on shift, on the front lines, hopefully interacting with other solutions of Jolt, but that's not necessarily mandated or required. It's a tool that could be self-sufficient in its own.
So what are the mechanics of this? How does this work, and how is it better than those Post-it notes, message boards, or even red signs on a time clock?
Yeah, that's a great question. So hopefully you can kind of see this illustrated by the picture there. That is a tablet, right? So whether you're using an iPad, iOS based tablet, or Android, you have a tablet at your location. And again, based or kind of back to what Jolt is we're not just this tool, we're also lists, sensors, labels. So the idea is, as your employees are interacting with the tablet to do a list, or maybe they're printing off labels, or they're checking their sensors. Again, that's not required, but just the biggest use case we've seen. They're interacting with this tablet. Well, in order to interact with it, you have to log in. So every employee has a login of some sort that you put in a PIN, and now you're logged in as your profile. When you do that, you are then presented automatically with what we're calling announcements. And so that's kind of the mechanics and the logistics behind it, where as you log in to Jolt and to the system, whether it's you're looking for announcements or doing these other solutions, you can be presented with this information.
Got it. So I'm able to see announcements. Are you able to tailor this so that people in certain roles can see certain announcements that aren't necessarily relevant to other people?
100%, right? It's not just this feature, but really all of Jolt is all role-based, right? And so when you add employees to your system, you give them a role, and you can use that role to do a lot of different things, but it works with this functionality as well.
Got it. I'd imagine that takes care of some of the cry wolf, situation you talked about before. People might start tuning out if they're seeing a lot of announcements or messages that aren't relevant to them. They're more likely to tune in if every announcement they see is relevant to their job.
Exactly.
What are some of the primary use cases for this? Kind of run me through. I know, your customer George shared that example of kind of this scary food recall scenario, but what are other situations where announcements might be useful?
Yeah, it's you mentioned it, product recalls, and product recalls are just one subset of food safety, right? Food safety is super critical to any food related business, and so there could be all sorts of communication that you want to have around food safety. So really, any sort of food safety food safety announcements. This screen here talks about a change in policy, right? That's a classic example, whether it's a brand change or just your company changes a policy, a procedure of some sort. Any sort of LTOs, back in our Baskin Robbins days, right? It was very common for us to have monthly limited time offers, new menu items, flavor of the month, right? So those are all great reminders. I've also seen things like when you hire new employees, you can do like employee spotlights or employee shout outs. Really, the list goes on and on. Just think about what kind of communication are you trying to get to the front lines, and it really can be used for any of that. And so those are just a few of the examples.
Got it. Josh, what are some good examples where you've been able to make use of this feature?
So we use it for a lot of different things, but the biggest thing that we use it for is we send out a weekly newsletter to all of our managers that has everything from where the managers rank in their drive-through times, store-specific stats, cleanliness scores that come directly from our Jolt lists, and any upcoming events. And we've been doing that for about 3 months now. And I knew it was working when one week I forgot to send it out, or I was a day late or something getting ready to send it out. And I was getting calls and texts from managers going, "Hey, when are you going to send this information out?" So, I knew they looked at it, and they looked forward to it each week. So, it's really helped try to keep everybody focused on our business. And yeah, works great.
So is it safe to say that you've actually found ways to use this as a tool for recognition and positive reinforcement?
Yeah, we do that too. There's a recognition thing that we have on our weekly newsletter. We've had managers that have received awards, and we've been able to like take a picture of them with it, and send us something quick out to everyone so they can see that, and really help everyone keep as part of the same team and really focus on those same goals.
That's interesting. So I think that that's a very powerful use case, for this tool. Beyond just sharing messages or changes in policy, we know that there's a labor shortage right now, especially in the food service and retail worlds. Making sure that you hold on to your best people, recognition goes a long way. And it seems like you found some really powerful ways to use announcements, not just to get word out about changes to policy, but to highlight some of your top performers. And it's something that your people are apparently responding to. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, they really like it.
Excellent. Now, CJ, are announcements limited to just simple text, like the example we see on the screen right now, or can you add media to make them more interesting and helpful?
Yeah, that's a great question, and the answer is definitely yes. As you see here on the screen, we recognize that text is just one form of communication. There's like myself, there's many people who prefer to learn from another person, right? They're very visual learners, And so being aware of that, we wanted to make sure we had things like images and video. PDFs provide an incredible amount of flexibility, right? Because as you attach a PDF, PDFs can be a lot of different things, both text and video, et cetera. And so those are just some of the examples that you can use as attachments to announcements.
Interesting. What are some clever examples, both CJ and Josh, of ways that you can incorporate this media and use it to share information with employees?
I know the one thing that we did that we had a lot of success with is we were having some issues with some of the procedures when people were cleaning our grills at night, and we were able to send out, I think it was just like a 2-minute video that just went through the procedures really quick that I just pulled down from McDonald's website, sent it out with a link also to where they could find it in the future in the information library. And it really helped to get everybody on the same page with that. And we saw, improved cleaning with our grills after that.
So not just telling people, hey, we need to up our game with this particular procedure, but actually show them how to do the thing that you wanted them to do.
Yeah, and it was nice because we could make sure that everyone saw it and not just overlook the email that it came in or whatever. So it was good.
Also mentioned, as Josh said in some of the use cases with the recognition, right? Taking a picture, right? And having that be part of the announcement. And so that's an example there. One I had with the Tropical Smoothie Cafe, for those familiar with that brand, they've actually partnered with a group called Camp Sunshine, which is an organization that provides retreats for families with children with life-threatening illness. And so a really cool partnership that they have. And on a weekly basis, particularly the weeks leading up to some fundraising campaigns they had, they wanted to get out word of different Camp Sunshine announcements and really just kind of highlight the date of that fundraiser and really just bring a lot of attention to it. And so they created some announcements around that to make sure everyone was on the same page. And it was really cool, just some of the content that they delivered that wasn't just text, but video and picture as well. And then, as I mentioned, examples are meeting new employees, doing spotlights that include photos, maybe a little video, things of that nature, are all creative ways that I've seen people use announcements.
Well, often people are more visual learners. They like to see pictures, they like to see images. So I'm guessing that does also help to address getting people to actually read or pay attention to the message. That being said, with all of these tools, that still remains the fundamental problem, right? How do you ensure, even with videos, even with photos, that people actually read or watch the announcement, and more importantly, that they actually pay attention to what they see?
Yeah, it's the answer is simple, and my favorite aspect of this feature, and that is quizzes, right? An optional feature of announcements, but an extremely powerful one, and one I would recommend that you don't ever leave off, because as you mentioned, getting the information to your team is just step one. Making sure that they understand it, you verify understanding, and is important, right? And so you do that with this, what we call quizzes. And so you're not limited by however many questions. You can ask as many questions as you want as follow-up. But in this example, you have this food safety quiz, right? So whether it was a recall or, as Josh mentioned with some of their newsletters, you could have, you set up questions that, again, with a multiple choice kind of backing that they have to choose from. And they cannot move forward if they have not gotten the question right. So they can fill all the questions, and the ones they've gotten wrong, they'll have to do again. And what's cool about that is, again, you can't just like pencil whip through the quiz. I mean, at some level, I guess you could, but there's ways around that, because on the back end of this is a very powerful reporting engine where we've got what we call a reader's report. And so let's say you have at one location, you have a roster of 50 employees. You'll see all 50 employees, and you'll be able to see, have they or have they not seen the announcement? And then if you have quizzes attached to it, you can see what percentage they got correct and how many attempts they took to do it, right? And so if I have a question with 4 options and I had to attempt it 3 times, you know that I had to try all answers before I got it right. And if you start seeing a trend with that employee, you know that they're kind of pencil whipping that. So we put in some measures to avoid that, but really the quizzes is just a really powerful option to make sure that employees have actually seen and understood the communication that you're going for.
So if I'm working at this business, I know when I see that announcement and I have that quiz, my boss is going to be able to tell I read the message, and they're going to see the number of tries that it took me to get that quiz right. So I'm especially motivated to make sure that I actually read the message, understand it, so I can pass that quiz.
If you don't know that ahead of time, you'll learn very quickly that yes, that is correct.
Josh, what have been some of your examples incorporating quizzes into your announcements?
So like I was saying with our weekly newsletter, I'll just put a few simple questions on there. Maybe it's, tell me what the date of this new product starting is. Just all like follow-up questions from the newsletter so that, again, I know that they read it. But also just to add, I think when someone knows that there's going to be a quiz on the information, they pay a little bit more attention to it the first time also. So I think that's definitely a benefit that helps with that.
Excellent. Well, I think what you've demonstrated here is that powerful principle of giving people that extra incentive to pay attention. They're seeing messages that are tailored to them. They know their boss is going to be able to tell whether or not they read the message, and they have to answer a quiz to verify their comprehension. I think you've given us a good understanding of the announcements feature. Let's shift gears now and talk about the other feature of Communication Manager, which is Message Blast.
Yeah, Message Blast, again, is all about communicating to your employees, but just a different method. And so this is all about through text and email. And so really the use case behind this is a little bit different from announcements, because remember, announcements is when your employees are on their shift, right? They're on the front lines at the store. This is typically communication outside a person's shifts, although it could work still while they're clocked in. But again, it's the method is through text and or email. And really the use case, because we recognize there's a lot of sensitivity to communicating with employees who are not working. We get that with different laws in different states. But there are certain situations when you have to communicate with employees, and that is they could be safety concerns or just emergencies. And so very common examples of this would be certainly as we get into the winter months, weather, right? I know in some areas, especially the Northeast, it's like there can be blizzards that shut down an entire town, right? A city. And certainly they would shut down a restaurant for that day. And so communicating, hey, we're not opening today because of this, you can blast that out to your team. Also, not just winter months, but of course, I know with hurricanes, different things, right? There's situations with weather that are just big examples of that. But any sort of emergency, I think Josh has a good example of this. I'll turn it to him from a safety standpoint, but really it's any communication that you want to get out really immediately. This is because the thing with announcements, if going back to that for a second, if an employee is not on a shift, they're not going to see that announcement maybe to the next day or the next 2 days, or if they're on vacation, they're not going to see till they get back. Message Blast is everyone's going to, as long as you have their text and their email, they're going to see that immediately. And so again, that's just another logistical thing. Is it's all about instantaneous communication right now when it comes to Message Blast.
So CJ, we use the Message Blast for, we've used it in the past for weather related closures, like you said, snowstorms and things like that, and to communicate our reopening plan. But we really used it at the beginning of COVID when all kinds of procedures were changing. Are we wearing masks? Are we not wearing masks? Do we have to wear gloves? All the different things with taking employees' temperatures, and just to communicate that important information out, because when someone showed up for work the next day, it may have been different than the day before, just based on everything going on. So we also try to keep it for, quote unquote, like emergencies. So it's not overused. And, when an employee gets one, they do understand that it's an urgent message and not just, a procedure change or anything like that. So
the benefit here is instantaneous communication, usually around things that are urgent, whether it's a weather event or an emergency of some kind, maybe even a power outage. Josh, I think you've called out something really interesting. When we're in a situation that is constantly evolving, like we saw in 2020 with the pandemic, just letting employees know, before you come in for your shift, hey, be aware you'll need to wear a mask today, or make sure you don't come in if you're having these symptoms, just so that we're extra compliant. I think that's a great call out and one that we've certainly seen a very powerful need for just over the last year and a half. Now, CJ, you mentioned that there was a special launch promotion for this solution. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. And we're excited, just kind of as a fun holiday end of year promotion for those who sign up for the Jolt Communication Manager before the end of this year, December 31st, will receive a 2-month credit towards your first your subscription. So you can see there month 1, month 2 covered by Jolt, right? And so we're excited to launch this. Hopefully it's an added incentive to an already great reason to purchase. Again, communication is just extremely important, making sure everyone from the top to the bottom is on the same page. And so we're excited to now have this as an option for our customers, and excited to offer this incentive as well.
Sharing messages with employees, attaching quizzes, reaching people, and taking advantage of the promotion. It all sounds great. How does a customer actually get started?
Yeah, super easy. Right here on the screen, you've got some options. We've got a phone number, email, and then really I think the best place is our website. If you go to our website right now, we have a dedicated page. If you go under products, that talks more about Communication Manager, and on, excuse me, on there is a way for you to submit your information to have either a demo. Many of you, if you're already a customer, you have a representative that manages your account, so you can reach out to them, telling them that you'd like to learn more. And so lots of avenues for you to get started.
Thank you, CJ. And thank you, Josh, for joining our discussion and answering my questions about the Jolt Communication Manager. Let's go ahead and turn the time over to Q&A from our audience. Shannon, who's been handling things from a technical side so far, she's been gathering your questions using the Q&A. So Shannon, I'll turn this over to you, and Josh and CJ, feel free to jump in and answer the questions that Shannon asks.
Thanks, Christopher. So as Christopher mentioned at the beginning of the session, you can send your questions to us using that Q&A chat feature, and I will go ahead and read them out. I do have a couple in here, so I'm going to start with those. And like I said, feel free to keep sending more over to us. First question, how do announcements work if only a few employees use Jolt?
So Shan, I'll take that question. So this is kind of how we use it, because we only use Jolt with our managers and supervisors. We have a generic crew login that they can use to complete some tasks, but our main focus is on our managers and supervisors. So, you know, we use it to communicate to them, and then they pass some of that information to the crew. But it's definitely beneficial, you know, even if you're not touching everybody with the product. You know, and I think someone said at the beginning, you know, it's all role based. So if there's specific information you want to go to specific roles, you can send that out, and you don't have to send everyone everything, because there may not be something that you want to send to a specific role.
Perfect. And can people reply to announcements in Communication Manager?
The answer to that's no, and not just Communication Manager. We'll talk announcements and message blast, because announcements, again, is being prompted on the tablet itself. And so the only way, I guess, of communicating is just filling out that quiz, but there's no avenue of responding to them. As far as the message blast goes, whether through a text or email, if you were to reply to those, it doesn't have a reply function built in, and so they wouldn't go anywhere. And so and they're designed by that. For now, announcements and message blasts are more of a communication from the top down.
Got it. Can quiz questions be formatted as short answer or only multiple choice?
That is a great question. As of today, just multiple choice. Again, hopefully you've seen this. For those of you that are customers or been with us a while, when Jolt launches something, it's that's just phase 1 of it, right? Phase 2, we have in the works, and certainly in discussion, to build upon it just being multiple choice, where we can do things like that, short response, surveys in the future, things of that nature. So that's feedback we've heard, and we're very excited to build that into a phase 2 when that time comes. But as of today, this launch, it is founded on just those multiple choice questions.
Can I use media in message blast, not just announcements?
Sorry, Shannon, say that one more time.
Can I use media in message blasts and not just in announcements? So I'm thinking
Oh,
that,
yes.
yeah.
Sorry, the answer is yes and no. So you can get creative. And why I say that is when you go to create an announcement on the back end, it actually has a button for you to link or attach information. So whether it's like a file uploader, right? Whether it's a video, a picture, a PDF, etc. On the message blast, you don't have that same functionality where you actually like attach an image. But what I've done even internally and what I've seen others do is because you're limited to text, that text can actually be a link. So if you wanted someone to do a survey or watch a video, or those are the two most common examples I've seen, you can actually type out the URL so that when the recipient sees the text and or email, you actually have that link embedded in the message itself. So you can't actually attach it per se, but through the text, you can actually have it be part of the body of the text, which is a way I've seen people do it.
Is there a limit of how much information I can add or we can add a video of 30 minutes for new employees? So I'm thinking that's just more around a limit in announcements in terms of how much content can be added.
Yeah, that's a good question for both. So I'll just hit the easy one. Message blast, text, you are limited to text only like 300 characters and email up to 1,000 characters. And so that's the message blast. As far as announcements go, if you're familiar with our information library, you're only limited by really the device you have. Because the way announcements work is that video or that file has to sync down to the tablet itself to be able to play to employees. And we don't put limits on that at the moment, but what's limited is your device. And so are you running a 16, 32, 64, et cetera? That would be the question to ask. A 30-minute video would work just from a software perspective. I've not seen that use case per se. And Josh, I'd love for you to chime in on this and what you've seen work the best. It really, from my talking with customers and best use cases, it does seem that 2 minutes, maybe at most up to 5 minutes, has been the use case for announcements if you're going to play a video of that nature. Because remember, if an employee is using that tablet, they are using that tablet. Now, if you're using multiple tablets at the store, then that could open that up. But that's just something to consider. Is what is the purpose in that announcement? I think the question was a new employee, new hire. You can accomplish those through the list function as well. And so we'd love to talk to that person who answered that question. But I think, yes, you could do it, but is it the right use case? That's something we'd love to talk to you about.
Yeah, and I would say that, I mean, like announcements, I think of them as someone logs in the tablet to start their day or to do a task, they're seeing that announcement. Where, if you have a new hire, they're not necessarily logging in, maybe putting that in the information library where someone can go and find it and play it as a video would probably be more beneficial than putting it on an announcement.
Great. And another question here. My employees have been able to reply to my message blast in the past. Does that mean this feature is going away?
That is a great question. This might be a limited understanding of me, which I don't know everything at Jolt, being a co-founder, but my understanding was you couldn't reply. But I know we didn't do anything differently. So if that's been something that's worked, let us double check on that and get back to you.
All right. Are there any other questions? Again, feel free to send those through the Q&A. All right. I don't see anything. Oh, sorry. One more. Can you schedule announcements to be posted in the future?
Yes. So when you create an announcement, there's a not just actually start, but also end. And yeah, so. And Josh, I'm actually curious, do you use that function much of, do you create them like in advance and then, hey, I want this one to start in a couple weeks? Or is it more?
Mine are more week to week, but I have them start on a certain day and end on a certain day.
All right. Last call. Any other questions? Can you give us more instructions on how to add announcements?
Clarify, like add announcements to your, to what you use at Jolt, or like actually how to create an announcement? And maybe I'll just say both if we're.
Yeah, I think just say both.
As far as
Okay.
getting started, and yeah, this goes back to the screen you see here. If you're interested, if you're interested in announcements, what we've talked about today, I would certainly get in touch with any representatives that you've been working with in the past. If you are a Jolt customer, so whether it's your customer success manager or an account executive that you've worked in the past, if you're new to Jolt and don't have a representative you've worked with, then you've got 3 forms of communication. You've got our phone number you can dial into. You've got our email there at sales@jolt.com. And then I think a great spot for 2 reasons. One is, our website, jolt.com. If you go there, there's actually a dedicated, under our products, a communication manager page. And there you can actually learn more information that we've talked about here on the webinar. And then there's a few buttons there where you can actually request a demo and get more information. And that can also spur you getting in touch with somebody. And they can walk you through the process of how to add announcements to your business. But as far as creating announcements, it's the same thing of anything in Jolt. You've got your web-based account. You would log in on a computer, and on the left menu, there's a the first layer menu item is called communication, and you would click into there, and there you would see your announcement section. You'd click on the announcements, and there you'd walk through the options of creating a new announcement. And I won't go through all the details because it's pretty simple as you go through, but that's kind of how you'd get to it on the back end.
Thanks, CJ. I have another question that came in as well. Is there any way to send message blasts in content group mode, or does it have to be sent by location?
That's a great question. Right now, phase 1, it's been just location based. And so not at the content group level at the moment.
All right. Those are all the questions I see in here. So I think it is fair for us to wrap it up. Back to you, Christopher.
Shannon. And a big thank you to CJ and Josh for spending some time to introduce the Jolt Communication Manager, to answer my questions and to answer your questions as well. A quick reminder, do reach out to Jolt through that information you see on the screen, the phone, email, or the website if you have any interest in learning more, or if you have other questions about the Communication Manager, they'll be happy to help you. And don't forget to take advantage of that promotion, a credit of 2 months off your first year subscription when you sign up for the Jolt Communication Manager before December 31st. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I hope this information has been helpful. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, everyone.